As we gathered around the dinner table this holiday season, whether it be at your aunt's house for the annual Feast of the Seven Fishes or for Chinese food on Christmas Day, you probably noticed that people desperately avoided talking about politics. The divide among Democrats and Republicans it's now become so deep that Americans everywhere fear fighting with their loved ones over terms like cisgender, transgenderism, drag queen story hour, and being woke. Terms we never mentioned before are now mainstream, but you have to ask, why is that? Maybe part of the blame falls on who is the leader of the country and who he appointed to leadership positions across the country, like his transgender assistant health secretary, who has this to say about children transitioning.
There is substantial misinformation about gender-affirming care for transgender and gender-diverse individuals. The positive value of gender-affirming care for youth and adults is not in scientific or medical dispute. And we need to use our clinicians' voice to collectively advocate for our tech companies to create a healthier, cleaner information environment.
Not in scientific dispute. I mean, Levine is labeling any questions regarding life-altering surgery and puberty blockers as misinformation. Some of these same drugs are actually used in hormonal cancers like prostate and breast cancer. I mean, how did we get here? Where did these terms even come from? How did we fall so deep as a society that we now argue whether a man can give birth and whether or not children should be allowed to essentially chemically castrate themselves? I mean, keep this in mind, that if you say you're against kids having surgeries and puberty blockers, or even if you deny that a man, a birthing person can give birth, you're now a horrible person. Most people think that this sort of radicalization only happens in colleges and universities, but I think it's happening everywhere. You know, the Cambridge Dictionary has even changed the very definition of woman. It's now anyone who happens to identify as female. And it doesn't stop there. We already know that the woke mob loves to rewrite history, but they're now trying to even wokenize history. Take a look at this. I mean, the New York Times wants us to believe Little Women author Louisa May Alcott identified as a man. In the article, it reads, quote, "I am certain that Alcott never fit a binary sex gender model. Alcott may have experienced what we today would consider gender dysphoria." Whoa. So turning everything woke in present day isn't simply enough. They're now trying to go back and make history woke. But it doesn't end there. The Marine Corps is now being advised to get rid of addressing drill instructors as sir or ma'am for fear of misgendering that person, thereby hurting their feelings. In a 783-page report commissioned by the Marine Corps from the University of Pittsburgh, notes that other branches of military, like the Army, Navy, and Coast Guard, have also de-emphasized gender, and that, quote, employing gender-neutral identifiers can unintentionally offend or cause discord. Yeah, we spent probably millions of taxpayer dollars to fund that research. President Xi, who's of China, and Russia, they must be literally quaking in their boots hearing how we're spending millions of dollars wokeifying the military. After all, who could forget this U.S. Army recruitment video?
It begins in California with a little girl raised by two moms.
Why does it matter Emma was raised by two moms? Love is love, right? Keep in your mind your taxpayer dollars are going to this. You know, that money that's siphoned from your paycheck every single month?
As graduation approached, I began feeling like I'd been handed so much in life. A sorority girl stereotype. Sure, I'd spent my life around inspiring women, but what had I really achieved on my own?
Poor Emma. It must have happened in college or something. I mean, an 18 to 22-year-old is so susceptible to this kind of talk, right? But back in the day, most radical leftist thinkers actually became professors, writers. But with the cost of living so high in universities now paying many professors basically below minimum wage, trust me, I know. I was offered an adjunct journalism professor role at a university in New York that would have paid less per hour than your average fast food worker. So those radical progressives instead have now become lawyers, doctors, and journalists.
Now, it's in the middle of a racial reckoning, and this year has never been more important for truth, transparency, and reliable information.
This is a country that does not naturally elect women leaders.
This committee report is tonight the single most important committee report in the history of House Congressional Committee reports.
When it comes to race, white people need to listen more.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That's one of my favorite videos where you see the blazing inferno behind him and they're just calling it like a peaceful protest. I mean, this is the new normal where if you don't agree with the woke mob, the left, then you're racist because it's no longer about the color of your skin and not the content of your character. I mean, remember this? In June of 2020, the New York Times published an opinion piece by Senator Tom Cotton that simply called for the National Guard to stop the looting in the wake of the BLM riots. Employees of the Times then protested the piece, claiming it put black staffers in danger. Radical thinkers are infiltrating every single facet of our society, especially the tech industry. Hence, it should come as no surprise what we learned through the Twitter file dumps regarding the suppression of free speech by Facebook, Twitter, etc. And where is the mecca of tech but San Francisco? Fortunately, at least some people are waking up that woke doesn't work. And now there's a woke exodus. Over 500,000 people have fled from the state of California in just 2 years. They're also leaving New York City and other Democrat cities. And here's billionaire entrepreneur Mark Cuban and Bill Maher slamming San Francisco tech bros.
The whole technology industry went from, okay, this is growth, this is, the new thing, and now, it's just about people on the street.
I was going to say, the cleaning up the off the street industry is doing very
really well. The apps that say where you can go take
cleaning broken glass industry.
Just massive.
I mean, I don't want to add to the in the street and take a dump on San Francisco.
I mean, it's become a joke. It's become like the toilet of the United States. San Francisco, I'm sorry to say, is the prototype for what the Democrats want the rest of this country to look like. Think about it. That's Nancy Pelosi's hometown, Vice President Kamala Harris's. California's governor, Gavin Newsom, is already gearing up to run for president in 2024. That's why he went to the border. They want to turn the rest of the country into San Francisco, where the liberal elite live behind security guarded gates and the rest of the lowly people are living, eating, and defecating on the streets. But maybe this is why the Democrats want to do nothing about the drug crisis gripping our nation. Fentanyl is now the #1 killer of people ages 10 to 19, and they're buying it through social media. Seriously. More people died of fentanyl in 2022 than Americans in several wars we have fought combined. One statistic found that on average, 300 people die every single day of a drug overdose. That's like if a major jetliner crashed every single day. Yet, what is the Biden administration doing about any of this? Is President Biden stepping up security in Southern California, where 60% of fentanyl is coming through? Is President Biden on the phone with China's President Xi, demanding he stop supplying the Mexican cartels with the main ingredients of fentanyl? Perhaps Biden is closing up the border, hiring more border agents so they can actually do law enforcement instead of just processing paperwork. Nope. Actually, the opposite. Biden is trying to end Title 42 and just waiting for the border to get even more overrun with migrants. Thankfully, the Supreme Court just a few hours ago ruled that Title 42 must remain in place until they hear arguments in February. So what is the Biden administration actually doing to try to fix this drug crisis? Well, the FDA is now fast-tracking the approval of Revive, an over-the-counter version of Narcan, which reverses the effects of an opioid overdose. While I applaud the effort to save lives, once again, Democrats are simply treating the symptom rather than the actual problem. Injection centers are now popping up in every major Democrat city. Again, your taxpayer dollars going towards helping people basically kill themselves. Do you think it's a coincidence we're now hearing about fentanyl at the same time we have an open border? Is it a coincidence that the majority of people being killed by fentanyl are of military age? Make no mistake, everybody, America is under attack. It's a slow and deliberate destruction. Physically, mentally, and culturally, And of course, it's all about control. And our president, while feeble and clearly impaired by cognitive issues, knows full well what is happening, but I don't think he cares. And while he promises unity and hope for America, this is all he has to say.
I sincerely hope this holiday season will drain the poison that has infected our politics and set us against one another.
Once again, he continues to only blame Republicans, and the only poison is what's coming across the border, that rather than working to find solutions to actually save our country, save our people. So as long as he and his co-conspirators are taken care of financially, because that's what's really happening, the destruction of democracy will continue. And that is why at your next family gathering, please, don't be afraid to speak up. Sure, you may upset Aunt Sally or Deborah home from college, but trust me, we all have to speak up whenever we can, whether it be at the dinner table, at work, of course, you do it nicely, and at your local school board meeting, and most importantly, when voting at the ballot box.